there have really only been a small handful of times I've considered making a video about something, happening outside the actual software of Resolve, but in like the general Resolve space that could be seen as a little bit of drama. Small stuff like bugs or program issues never really rose to that level. Just a few versions ago now, we had an issue where loose .setting files, which, like, if you don't know what they are, don't worry about it, but certain types of presets were broken for an update, and then they fixed that. Something slightly larger like DaVinci Resolve 18.6, that was a really rough launch, and like a disproportionately large amount of people had bugs and crashes with that launch, and then bugs got addressed generations after that, or updates after that. Sometimes something I think interesting happens, but I just want to like give it some time to see how it goes. The big one I considered and never really made a video about was the option on Resolve for iPad, the workaround that was found to get you access to all the pages, the full version of Resolve on the iPad. When that workaround was first discovered, I was extremely confident that would just be like straight patched out of Resolve on iPad, that would not be an option. But Resolve chose to let users have that option if they went through those extra steps to get access to those parts of the software, even though they weren't like fully cleared for use on the iPad. Now, development for Resolve on the iPad is like a separate topic entirely. I'm not super sure, how much of a priority that is for Resolve anymore. We haven't seen, I feel like, any like legitimately iPad focused updates in a while, but them allowing the user access to the full version of Resolve could be seen as a general, pro-consumer move. What I want to talk about today is relatively niche, but I think to the right segment of the population is being seen as like a fairly straightforward anti-consumer move, maybe. Although even like those consumers who would be most effective are the people who haven't paid anything for Resolve, so are like, they're consumers, but they're not like customers. There's some interesting stuff to talk about. Let's try to get a quick summary. In DaVinci Resolve 19.1, Blackmagic restricted the way a certain kind of scripting works in the free version of Resolve. This affected a myriad of third-party controls who used this specific like scripting little engine to generate like UIs, like pop-ups or interfaces for their custom tools in Resolve. It even affected me. My drag and drop installer for my proto preset overnight only worked in the paid version of Resolve. I've since changed that default installation option so it works for everyone. So like I'm no longer specifically affected by this anymore, but other creators absolutely are, including something like Reactor. I don't think I've ever more than mentioned Reactor on my channel, and that's not because I have anything against Reactor. If you don't know what Reactor is, it's an amazing third-party tool generated by the community where all these like developers and Fusion pros have come together and created a whole lot of new tools that you can use in Fusion, and sort of added them to this one little bundle called Reactor, where you can browse all of these tools, choose which specific ones you would like to add to Fusion, and then like use those to do a lot more cool stuff in Fusion. And Reactor is free, but it used this specific kind of scripting, this UI manager system, to build the UI that it used. So anyone who wanted to use Reactor to browse or have access to those specific tools overnight with this update, DaVinci Resolve 19.1, if they were using the free version of Resolve, all of a sudden they got a pop-up saying that they were using like a Studio Pro feature where previously they were working fine. Now, I think the biggest legitimate issue here was the complete lack of communication. I don't have as strong feelings about lots of other things about like whether this tool should be in the free version or where Resolve wants to draw that line on free versus Studio, but there wasn't even a note in the release notes for that 19.1 update that this change had been made. And that sort of gets into the semantics of what this change actually was. Because from Blackmagic's side of view, this was closer to a bug fix. The only real direct communication we've got specifically about this issue comes from Peter Chamberlain, the DaVinci Resolve project manager, people talking about this on the forums, and he said, UI manager-based scripts and workflows need DaVinci Resolve Studio or Fusion Studio to be accessible. For some time, scripting through any UI has been the domain of the Studio version. This includes Node.js based and UI manager based scripts and workflow integrations. Some workflows slipped through earlier versions, and it's taken some time to get to get to this, but in DaVinci Resolve 19.1, we address this issue with UI Manager to be consistent with workflow integrations. So you can see how Blackmagic feels about this move, and I think their rationale does stand up. The general category of scripting in Resolve is super powerful, and lots of people don't know about it. If you have the studio version of Resolve, you can actually run DaVinci Resolve completely without a user interface. You can generate a script that will take whatever media you pointed at, load Resolve without displaying anything, and run through certain processes based on just what that script is telling Resolve to do in the background. And depending on which specific controls you use, you can process that media in lots of different ways and spit out a render, all without any direct interaction. And in that category of, adding that functionality, broadly speaking, and those workflow integrations, it's clear that Blackmagic wants that to be like an added studio feature. I do think it's a little easier for me to see both sides of this because I have been not hesitant, but I've definitely been slow to dive into the broader world of people developing their own tools and stuff like Reactor. I've been committed to trying to push Fusion as far as I can push it just with the included tools, and I still feel like I've got a lot further to go in that regard. But if I had invested any measurable time in creating these advanced tools and distributing them through something like Reactor, this would suck a lot. But maybe there's like a few key points I want to make. Number one, I think the studio version of Resolve is great and more than worth it. I've often said I think the free version of Resolve is worth more than the $300 price tag of the studio version. So if you want access to some broader or community-driven tools, part of me just says, yeah, it makes sense that you have access to that after making that initial step to Resolve Studio. But I do also want to point out that even though this will, I think, likely be in place in all future versions of Resolve, unless they decide to roll this back, I don't think they will, but you still have the entire back catalog of past versions of Resolve. If you need a specific feature from something like Reactor or another tool, and you either don't want to or can't jump up to Resolve Studio, you can download and install the version of Resolve right before this change was pushed. This is a big perk of Resolve in general. Over on the General Support Center page for Resolve, if you click DaVinci Resolve, in this little dropdown here, you have all these past versions of Resolve going back to what, like 2014? Yeah. 2014, Resolve 10.1.5. In general, if you feel like you're running into specific issues with a more recent version of Resolve and you thought you had a better experience a few versions ago, roll back to that version if you don't need any of the specific features that have been added since. I am a little bit more in this like expanded like custom tool or like Resolve plugin developer community than I think most people. I talk about it more. So maybe I've seen more general discussion about this than exists more broadly. It is very hard to know, what percentage of the general Resolve user base might have even known that any of these tools were available. Now, I am entering the realm of speculation, but there is maybe another piece of the puzzle that I don't want to read too much into. But really, for the first time in my memory since moving to Resolve, we've had 2 instances of DaVinci Resolve Studio going on sale. Straight from Blackmagic Design, DaVinci Resolve Studio was part of their Black Friday sale, and just recently, admittedly limited to the US, but Blackmagic Design just had a pretty big sale on DaVinci Resolve Studio activation cards. I do want to say, I think this is unlikely, but maybe these are little hints that maybe we actually might be getting a reduced standard price for DaVinci Resolve Studio coming up sometime. All things considered, I might bet against that, but I also wouldn't be surprised at all if Blackmagic Design does that. They just lowered their price of their big, 12K camera by thousands and thousands of dollars, and they've done that kind of thing across their products before, never with like software like Resolve, but the studio version has been at $300 for a while. Maybe that's something they want to do. And in that case, maybe a few more people would forgive them for locking one more small set of features behind Studio, especially when like they always kind of meant it to be locked behind Studio. I don't know. I don't think I have too much of like a super main point. This was just something in the back of my mind that I wanted to talk about because it's kind of an interesting move. It's easy to see where Blackmagic Design is coming from, wanting to be consistent on how they roll out these like expanded workflow tools. But in the process of making those changes overnight, they cut off a lot of users from using tools that they might have been actively needing to do the project they were working on. I do recommend users pick up the studio version of Resolve, but part of what makes that push so easy is all the things they do right in the free version, and especially I think how they went about not communicating this change is them not doing something right and maybe putting a sour taste in some people's mouths when they would have otherwise been a little more eager to be pushed towards studio. I also needed to say that Reactor is run through this one website, stakeunderwater.com. Their forum is the We Suck Less forum. I will post links here. If you're on the studio version of Resolve, you can absolutely pick up Reactor, poke around all the cool tools there, or even just their forum. Lots of really exciting stuff going on that really I should probably check out more often. So even if this does limit the broader reach of this to free users, if you're a studio user or even a free user and just you need to go about using some of these tools in a slightly different way, I absolutely want to support the work all these awesome people are doing over here. If you had no idea any of this was going on for the last few weeks or so, that's fine, but I've just been thinking about it. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to talk about how there's like little sales, might be working into it. And I wanted to direct some attention over to Reactor and the We Suck Less forum. Incredible people doing incredible stuff. And maybe I wanted to clickbait DaVinci Resolve drama a little bit, because I've never done that. And this is a little bit of drama, right? Some people are really mad at Blackmagic. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.